Good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining us. My name is Nilesh Surana, and I'm the head of marketing at CustomerSuccessBox. Welcome you all to a webinar on company success versus customer success. I'm going to be the moderator for today's webcast. Before we get started, I would like to remind you all that we are recording this webinar and you'll be receiving the recording in your inbox within 24 hours of the webinar. You're welcome to send your questions throughout the webinar via the Q&A box at the bottom of your screens or in the chat panel, and we'll try and answer as many of them as possible. There will also be a 10-minute live walkthrough of our customer success platform right after the Q&A and the discussions. Now, let's get to the topic. I'm excited to introduce to you our speaker, David Jackson. Dave is the founder and CEO of the Customer.co, which helps B2B SaaS companies profitably win, satisfy, retain, and grow their chosen customers better than the competition. Prior to founding the Customer.co, Dave founded, led, grew, and sold twice customer feedback specialists, Clicktools, where he served as CEO for 15 years. He has served in board, advisory, and interim roles for a number of SaaS companies. Currently, much of Dave's time is spent with senior managers, advising them on how to design and build companies from the outside in. He has had many articles published and is an author and contributor to several books. One of his books, Dynamic Organizations, The Challenge of Change, published in 1997, was the first to describe a holistic approach to building successful customer-focused organizations. In today's webcast, Dave will be speaking to Puneet Kataria about the mistakes he and other customer success leaders make and the do's and don'ts of building a great customer success capability. Now, a quick intro about Puneet. In his previous avatar, Puneet was VP at a B2B SaaS company, Kayako, where he inherited 10,000 plus live accounts and was tasked to plug the leaky bucket. 5 years later, that translated into an obsession to fix the leak for every B2B SaaS business, and Puneet started CustomerSuccessBox, where he leads as a founder and CEO. In over 16 years of professional experience, Puneet has held leadership positions at ThoughtWorks, IBM, Telelogic, and started his career as an engineer at Honeywell Aerospace. And now with that, I'll turn it over to you, Puneet and Dave.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening.
Very good morning, Dave, and thank you everybody for joining. I know a lot of you joined sort of, I think our first participant joined us like 15 minutes prior to the call, so thank you so much for your patience and for the excitement that you're showing for this particular webinar. My name is Puneet, and thank you, Nilesh, for a wonderful introduction. So we've been doing this has been a few series of webinars, and some of our past webinars have been more traditional. We start with a deck, we present it, and then Q&A and all that stuff. And then this time we thought that, hey, we realized every time we have conversation, everybody likes to jump in and participate. So while we have just two panelists who have supposedly the video powers and the video permissions. And by the way, Nilesh is sitting right next to me. Nilesh, you want to say hi? But think of this as a conversation that all of us are having, and we want to all utilize and sort of maximize the learnings that we can get from having Dave on the panel. I'm largely just going to be me, and supported by Nilesh, who's going to be moderating your questions and comments. Feel free to chime in, keep commenting, keep liking, keep disliking, keep disagreeing, keep asking more questions, and keep this conversation as active as we can. So without further ado, thank you so much, Dave, for agreeing to do this. And the topic, I think Nilesh has already mentioned. So whenever you're ready, we're ready. Okay, let's go. Okay, fantastic. Now, is there something that you want to talk about about yourself that you want to, as an introduction, that you might have missed? Go ahead. Anything?
Not a great deal. I think as you said, Nilesh did a great introduction. I think the only thing I would add is that I started a SaaS company with a couple of other guys in 2000 in the UK. And I think we probably figured it was probably one of the first SaaS companies in the UK. The word SaaS wasn't even invented. And I guess one of the things that's really, really different between then and now is now there are so many resources that you can go for for help, like this webinar. There's lots written, there's lots of books written, there are lots of webinars, there's lots of resources out there on the web. And I would encourage you to take advantage of them, join the forums, join the meetups that are springing up all over the place. But in all of doing that, always make sure that you make up your own minds. Don't do something just because other people, including me, say it's what you should do. Figure out what it is that you need to do to get the best out of, your customer base, and go with your guts, because quite often that's right.
No, very well said. Very well said. And Dave is definitely humble when he's saying that he just started the company in 2000. Not just started, successfully ran the show for a decade before exiting successfully. One of the very early successes in the SaaS ecosystem that I think UK witnessed, and overall SaaS was very young at that point in time, and I think that experience and a lot of follow-on experience, that's what we are looking to learn from. So to start with, Dave, on the topic of customer success, one of the how much of this is actually buzz? And can you help us separate the buzz from the reality? Is it just in the air, or is there some substance to it?
Well, it's definitely some in the air. It's no surprise to people listening that customer success is one of the fastest growing job roles according to LinkedIn. I think it's about the fourth or fastest growing. But there is a lot of hype about it, and it's in some respects it's very new, but in other respects it's not new. And I was doing a little bit of research of this, and and as you can see from my increasingly fewer grey hairs, I'm old enough to have been around a little bit. And there was a guy called an American marketing guru called Theodore Levitt, who in 1974 said, "Customers don't buy a quarter-inch drill. What they want is a quarter-inch hole." And that's the first thing that's the first time I've ever heard anybody reference the importance of outcomes as what customers are buying. So in that respect, it's not new. The growth of SaaS and the growth of the subscription economy, where you have to effectively win your customer almost every month, has heightened that intensity on the focus on the customer. So yeah, it's not new, but then again, it is new, and there is a lot of hype about it. And I think one of the best things that I did is, the advice I gave at the beginning. One of the benefits of selling a company is you get a bit of time to do what you want to do. And I was able to step back and say, well, if I was to start again, what would I do the same and what would I do differently? And I think one of the things that I would do differently was I would ensure that people stopped talking about customer success as a department and started talking about customer success as a capability. I think that's the first thing. So, that's, if we focus on what does it take to make customers successful, and don't think of that automatically as a team of people. And we'll come on to perhaps a little bit more of that. And, the philosophy of customer success, I think, is very right. But some of the practices I'm not so sure about. One of the big ones, which I think is widely recognized but not widely practiced, is that customer success is not just about the team called customer success. And the reason I think that capability is so important is that CEOs have got to get to grips with the fact that this is something that spreads right across their organization. You talked about the leaky bucket. The leaky bucket starts when marketing and sales target their own customers and sell to people that we're never going to be able to renew. So it's there. It's very much around what the product is and what the product does. So it supports that. And it's everything about post-sale. It's not just about what people call the customer success department. It's about support. It's about account management. It's about expansion sales. So think much more about the broader capability rather than just a success team or department. So
I think that's a very interesting point. So 1974 was the first time when it was clearly identified what customers are purchasing is they're looking for solutions for their problem and not just another product. Do you think back, from that era to now, the expectations of customers have changed? The technology has changed. Of course, this is the era of the millennials and about to hit. So the way we will look at customer success, is that going to be different? So what's same and what's different between then and now?
So I think what's same is that customer needs are always changing. They always have. And that's one of the beauties of working in this field. It's also one of the strengths of organizations that really are externally focused rather than inwardly focused, because you have to keep responding to changing needs all the time. Now, have certain changes made big differences? Yes. Customers have got access to far more information now than they ever had, far easier. If you want to know something, you just Google it and you can find a lot of it. If you want to know how good a company is, you go and visit the review sites, and you'll learn a lot from them. They're not always right, but they're pretty reliable. So that access to information has made a massive difference. And the other thing is that I think people are increasingly busy, and they've got really big challenges. And I think what that's done is from a customer's perspective, has said, well, actually, I just need to get on with my job. And I think one of the mistakes we make in customer success is we think they want to talk to us, when often it's, no, they don't. They need to talk to us, probably because of something we've done wrong elsewhere. And I've got this thought about what I call the backlash to the notification generation. If you've got a mobile phone and you've got a number of apps that you're using, what do you get? You get constant notifications all the time. And it's a bit like medicine. If we use too many antibiotics, they become ineffective. If we get too many notifications, we'll stop listening to them. So we've got to find new ways to reach customers. So I think those things are changing. And they'll be different in 2 years' time. They'll be different in 5 years' time. Customers have always changed. So in that respect, it's just the same.
No, I think that's a great analogy to what can be effective and how we have to discover new things. So in today's context, when we speak about customer success, is that different from company success? Are they same? Which one leads to the other? And how big is this really? How big is this opportunity really? So if an organization decides to do customer success, what will that translate into a company success? And if it will, what's the impact we're talking about?
They are two different things. And I think one of the mistakes that many people made, and I made it myself earlier in life, is that we confuse company success and customer success. I've done quite a lot of work recently on what I call product-led customer success. And one of the things that I think if I were to do differently now is, if I were to build a leadership dashboard, it would have two columns. One column would be customer success. So it would be company success. It would be things like ARR, net revenue retention, gross retention. So, the financial and operational measures that say we're doing a good job as a company. But now I would insist on having a second column, which was headed customer success. And that would have measures like things like the percentage of customers that are achieving value, the average value that customers are achieving, the time to value. Because I think, actually that's the prime column that we should be looking at. Because if we generate customer success, we've got a much better chance of generating customer success. One follows the other. So I think, that's the important point. Is it an opportunity? It's a massive opportunity. And I always think about it in terms of 4 R's: retention, revenue, referrals, and reputation. So retention on its inverse, which is churn, is an obvious one. The subscription economy now means that we have to continually keep winning our customers month after month, year after year, week after week, day after day. And that makes a significant contribution to the overall revenue of the company. In fact, if a company's run well, probably after 3 to 5 years, revenue from existing customers is going to be by far the biggest part of the income line of the company. And customers that you keep, the chances are a good percentage of those you can sell more to. And everybody knows the maxim around it being easier to sell to existing customers than it is to new customers. And if you're doing the right things and if you're keeping them, you get that expansion revenue opportunity. Referrals, reputation, very good at generating what I call secondary revenue opportunities. So they create more opportunity to sell more to different customers. And if you add those all up, that gives you a growth in your top line. It probably helps your bottom line a little bit as well, because the cost of acquisition for renewal revenue versus new revenue is very, very much lower. Referrals tend to be the lowest form of acquisition cost and one of the highest converters. So, your profitability improves. And one of the things that I've done for a few companies, built almost like a business case. And this is great, by the way, with CEOs. You go to a CEO and you ask for some numbers around what's your income, what's your new business revenue, what's your ARR from new business, what's your expected growth rate. And you can take those figures and a couple of others and then say, okay, well, look, if you retain your revenue at 95%, this is what your business will look like in 5 years' time. If you return at 80%, this is what your business will look like. And the difference between the numbers purely from retention, which stems from delivering value to customers, customer success, is significant. So after 5 years' time, your revenue is probably going to be 40% greater, and your growth rate will be 50% greater. And Puneet, you're a CEO, and we're interested in what's our company worth. Well, if we get that sort of growth, we get that sort of retention, then we're probably going to double our valuation.
As a CEO, it's a no-brainer, but
yeah, but you say that, but then I've met a few CEOs where, by that definition, that don't have a brain.
Well,
or they don't.
I wouldn't go that far.
There's a difference between what they say and what they do.
Yes, and I think this sort of leads to a more tactical question. See, it's a no-brainer in the long run, but what happens, especially when you are sort of in that growth mode, that hey, we are still in the acquisition mode, we're still launching new products, we're still launching new releases, and we need to acquire more customers. And what happens? Every CEO knows that yes, they will have to eventually focus on customer success because of all the reasons, and that was wonderful, the 4 R's. But when is the right moment? Should we do that from customer 1? Should we do from customer 100? Should we do that from first $1 million, first $10 million? What's that right moment? And do we? Well, it sounds like you're suggesting that CEOs no more in the subscription economy. They don't have a choice but to focus on customer success and deliver customer success. Delivering products is not enough.
Yes and no. So my answer to the question is, if you understand the economics of it, mm-hmm. then you recognize that you have to build for retention from day one. And the other thing is, you talk about we've got to do all this work in product. Let's go back to what's the purpose of the company. Now, I know lots of companies have got different missions and purposes, but fundamentally, and again, this is not new. Peter Drucker, I think in 1954, said the purpose of a company is to win and keep a customer. Mm-hmm. Now, in that context, to me, customer success as a capability and a mindset starts at day 0. As a team, it might state later on. And part of the reason I think it starts at day 0 is because SaaS products, particularly B2B SaaS products, which is where my domain and interest lies specifically, we build product companies. Well, if you take those two things, one is at the heart, they are a product company, and you can understand we'll talk in a minute about the revenue and the valuation implications of a product company, product revenues versus services revenues. If you take that concept, and then you take the concept that you've got to build retention in from the start, the whole customer outcomes, that's what they're buying, and you put those two together, you actually start building a company by building a product which by design delivers customer success. So in that context, it's not an add-on. It might later on require you to add some people in to enhance that capability. But I think, and the mistake I made from day one was, I didn't build the product in a way which automatically delivers customer success.
So I think that's a brilliant point. So how will an organization know that they are delivering customer success? Identifying the goal, like, are there any measures, like any specific data points that they should be measuring that will tell them, you know what, we are on track on customer success? Or are there any, similar measures or metrics or KPIs that they can monitor, which tells them it's not working out?
Yeah. Well, the obvious one is the retention number will fall, but that's too late because that's after the fact.
Yes.
By the time they've decided they're going to leave, if you get involved at that stage, you're lost. The chances of winning them back are probably, I guess, 1 in 50, 1 in 100 if you're good at it, because they've made the mental and emotional decision that they're going to move on. So that's too late. I know a lot of people put a lot of store by health scores, and I think they have a great role to play. But again, I think one of the mistakes that I made early on was what constitutes a health score. And I did a workshop at Pulse in Europe last year on health scoring. The first item on a health score should be the level of value the customer's getting out of you. Now, unfortunately, that's not the case. Too many health scores are built on data that exists rather than data that's important. So I know the importance of usage data, but usage data is not always a causal correlation to renewal, because just because you're using a product doesn't necessarily mean you're getting value from it.
Yeah.
Somebody might use the product every day, but if they aren't doing other things, which by the way might not be directly product related, they won't get the results they want. Therefore, they'll say, why am I spending this money?
Yeah.
I'll not renew. So health scores, yes, but make sure that you understand the relationship between the value that you're delivering to customers, how they measure it, not how you measure it, but how they measure it, and that you can track that, and you're advising customers of everything they need to do to achieve that. Now, might you have what I call other proxy measures, other indicators that suggest that that's happening or not happening? There may be. But, do yourself a favor and test to make sure that there's a direct causal correlation between value achieved by the customer and these other indicators that you're looking at.
Yeah, I think that's sort of very, very, very well put. So the way we look at it, and if I can jump in for a minute here, the way we look at it in terms of, yes, there is tons and tons of data, product usage data that keeps coming in, and frankly, there is no dearth of analytics around product usage today, but I think there is a huge gap between understanding what is value versus what is just noise, and in fact, I don't even call it noise. So for example, if I can take this example of a CRM, so let's say if somebody who's deploying a CRM, the value, let's say one of the best proxies for value could be opportunities closed won. So if the opportunities closed won are above a certain threshold, then that's value delivered. But before we get to that value, that's not the only value. There can be multiple values, but let's assume this one. But before we get to that value, there is a whole path to that value. The people, customer will have to upload data. Customer will have to manage users, create an opportunity, move it through different statuses. What I call this is actually not value. Rather, it is exact opposite. This is the pain, the effort that you have to put into the product before you get to the value. So there has to be a clear differentiator between the product adoption, which leads to value, but the value is the end goal. And a lot of times we sort of mistakenly assume that some of the pieces, like not every action in the product is necessarily going to be product adoption. I think that's very good.
That is very true.
Puneet, I'll just interrupt here. So Anil has a follow-up question to what you said. since you deliver the value to the customer, but are there key metrics that you put in place to track as a bare minimum?
Let's ask the expert. Yeah.
To track customer value or company value? If it's to track customer value, then you have to find a way. And I say have to because I think, the danger is, oh, well, that's too hard, we won't do it. Listen, this is the core of our job. It can't be too hard. It's something we have to do. So you have to find ways to ask customers what they're trying to achieve. You have to say, well, if the metric is leads generated, if the metric is new business won, what's your current performance level? Okay, what do you expect? What do you want to achieve? And by the way, we shouldn't actually ask them. We should tell them that, because we have to be experts in that domain of their business. Otherwise, how can we help them get to success? So, the process that I think is important is a success plan, which says, tell me a little bit about your business. What's your current level of performance? What's your goal? Okay, if you're going to achieve that goal, you need to do these things. This is your success plan. And it's tailored. Now, in terms of measuring that, then you can measure how many of those milestones that you're hitting. You can measure the actual value that they're receiving. And I think, I know of half a dozen companies now that are starting to look at actually embedding value achieved into their product. So you can actually track it in the product, which, by the way, is where it should be, because we are product businesses. So, you can look at milestone achievements, you can look at value achieved, you can look at average value achieved, you can look at time to value. And I think they are the most important things that we need to understand about our customers. The level below that is then, okay, well, what are the practices that the customer needs to do to achieve those things, to achieve those results? Some of them will be how they use the product. Others will be things about maybe how they measure their own business, their part of the business, how they organize certain processes. And we have to find ways to influence change in that. One of the benefits of age is that you hear people say things time and time again. And one of the things I've heard repeatedly is that successful change is almost never the result of technology alone.
So what are the other ingredients then?
Well, a lot of companies will have to change the way that they do their processes. So they might have to look at different ways of lead generation. I work with one company which is about lead gen. And part of the reason behind the churn was they were attracting a certain type of customer, relatively small companies, that actually had no idea about how to drive business to their websites. Yeah. Now, we could have, made the product that we had work perfectly. But if they get no traffic, it's no good. So you've got to get, and I think, one of the things that we have to lead for customer success, and by the way, this should be also shared with marketing and sales, is what are the challenges our customers face? And really build a deep understanding of what those challenges are and how you can solve them. Yeah. So, for example, one of the best things we ever did, I think, at Clicktools, and I've just looked down the participants list, and one of the guys that worked for me then is, I think, on the thing is, we built an end-to-end buyer and customer journey. And the buyer journey is particularly interesting because what we did is we basically scrapped our sales process. We scrapped the traditional funnel waterfall of marketing qualified lead, sales qualified lead, opportunity, qualified opportunity, And what we put in place was a buyer journey and a customer journey, which was, where's the buyer at? What stage are they at? And that's very much, right back to, well, they don't know that they've got this problem. Then, okay, well, we need to tell them they've got this problem, because otherwise they'll never come and buy from us. Right, and everything we did, through building awareness, building the fact that we know about this space and what our specific differentiations was, all of those stages were built in the words of the buyer. So it was, what's the buyer challenge at this stage? How do we address it? What tools do we need to help them do that? When do we know that they've successfully completed the tasks? Same with the customer. So, in a way, the point of sale is the point where the the risk transfers from the seller to the buyer. Because the buyer's made the decision they're going to spend this money on us. Heck, and they'll say something else then. We need to make sure we get a return from it. We've got to be active in that. So we've got to start saying, okay, well, what are the challenges they face? How do we help them solve that one? How do we help them solve that one? How do we help them solve that one? And as I say, some will be about how you use the product. Others will be outside the product.
Yes. And
outside in thinking.
It's a great point that people are looking for solutions, and they have specific reasons which sort of should be started and well understood in the top stages of the funnel, which is your sales and then marketing. And that's what I think when you're speaking about that customer success is not a department, it's a capability which sort of cuts across organizations, cuts across departments. And one of the pieces actually we covered fairly in detail in one of our earlier webinars was how do you onboard customers? And one of the key points, and this is a framework that we've developed in the past, one of the key points that we sort of learned while working with a lot of customer success organizations, a lot of other SaaS companies, was that different customers buy the same product for different reasons. Yeah. And understanding the main reason behind purchase, and then ensuring that is delivered in the first 30, 60, 90, whatever your early onboarding cycle is. Yeah. And you're able to deliver that, just that milestone, not all the features, not all the trainings, don't overwhelm the customer. Understanding what was the key pain point, what was the main reason why they purchased. I think that's, so to speak, brilliant.
Two things come out of that, Puneet. One is, if I had my time again, what would I do differently? One of the things I'd do differently is I would ensure that at the late stage of every sale, we delivered an outline customer success plan to the customer before they signed. For two reasons. Mm-hmm. One is, I think it would be a differentiator.
Yes.
The second is, I'm setting expectations about not just what we're going to do after the sale, but what I want them to do after the sale. And by the way, if they're not willing to do that, do I really want them as a customer? Because I can't make them successful. And if I can't make them successful, I'm probably just buying churn again. And I think that's where, in the customer success department, we can actually do a great job by getting involved, or at least teaching our salespeople how to deliver an outline customer success plan. So
I think that's very well said. So you want to bring in customer success, what will happen, who will own what are the customer responsibilities, what are the responsibilities of the customer success of the organization, and maybe some pieces of the product as a service and a product combination, if that's what you meant.
Yeah.
And then continuing on the same thread, is customer success one-time activity, or is that an ongoing thing? What are we? Yeah. And also, if you can cover, how's that different? How's customer success different from more traditional account management, very relationship building approach that we've seen, for many, many years?
So the answer to your first part of your question, Puneet, is it a one-time thing? It's a one-time thing if you only want one renewal. If you want repetitive business,
yes,
you have to keep going back and say, okay, well, and that, I remember working with a company. I said, look, you've got them to this level. Once you've got to this level, you can't stop. You need to get them to that level, and then to that level, and then to that level, and then to that level. Now, is it exactly the same process? Probably not, because once you've taken them through the first iteration, you've taught them a lot, hopefully. You've got them on your side. And it's just, it'll be tweaking things all the time. And it may get to the point where you don't need to get involved. I remember, again, back at Clicktools, our biggest customer was Procter & Gamble.
Okay.
And they were using our product to do certain things. We couldn't teach them anything. This is Procter & Gamble. They're some of the brightest minds in brand management and customer management around. They didn't want us phoning up every touch and turn. Did we stay in touch? Yes. And this is another mistake we make. We assume that the customer wants to be spoken to all the time. They don't. And I go back to the same, that I said earlier. If we are having to call the customer all the time, it's probably because we've not built the product the right way in the first place, and probably because we've not got the right sorts of customers.
So what should give me the confidence as a success manager? So if I have a portfolio of 100 accounts, and let's say one of them is Procter and Gamble, what is that one thing that will tell me that, hey, Puneet, don't call Procter and Gamble? Of course, I'm not talking about the capability gap here. Like, I cannot teach anything to them, but let's say I can help them. But what will give me the confidence that they're fine, they're getting value?
It's back to what your customer's trying to achieve with your product and finding ways to measure that and understanding whether they are on that path. So I'm not saying we don't contact customers. I'm saying we have to be careful about forcing contact when we think we need it, when we think they need it, rather than when they need it.
When we start slipping into company success.
Exactly, yeah. Well, so everybody on this meeting, how many different software products do you use? The chances are that even small companies are using 10, 20, 40, 80 different software. Now, just imagine, that you're a customer of your product, and you say, right, I'm going to contact you every week. Oh, by the way, the 10 or 20 other suppliers say, I want to contact you every week. I've got no time to do my job. Leave me alone to do my job. Give me a product that works. So we've got to be careful about confusing our desire for contact with the customer's need for contact. To go back to, how do I know when to intervene? Well, let's focus some real intense effort on understanding how we can track value and desired outcome, and understanding what the real causal correlations are that point to that. Those are the few things that we track. That sense that we give it. So, if I've got a success plan in place, are they doing their part? Are they actually meeting the milestones? And can I check that? And I keep going back to this. The biggest lesson, the biggest thing that I would do differently would be building success into the product. Because if I've got it in there, I can track it easily. I'm not interrupting them in a way that they don't want to be interrupted. So that's the path that I would go down.
So there's a very interesting question regarding this, like, where should customer success live in an organization? Under sales, under professional services, or should it be flipped and sales and professional services should sit under a customer success function? Right.
There's two parts to that answer, Nilesh. One is it sits everywhere. That's the glib answer. That's the customer success as a mindset answer, and there's validity in that. In terms of, should it sit in sales? Should it sit in marketing? Should it sit on its own? Should it report to the COO? I don't think it really matters, personally. I love quotations, and one of my favorite ones, I won't get this exactly right, but the intent is, and it was, the saying goes something like this. We were formed into teams, and we would just begin to produce results. Then we would be reorganized. I was to learn later in life that it was a great device for creating the illusion of progress whilst creating confusion, low performance, and disillusionment. Now, that quote was attributed to a Roman general over 2,000 years ago. We focus on organization design in terms of who reports to whom. We need to think about organization design in terms of what do our processes look like, and how do we manage the interactions in those processes, which is why I went back to why we introduced the buyer journey, because that was all from the outside in. Now, part of that was who's responsible for doing that. I don't think it really matters. If you've got that right, if you've got the metrics right, if you've got the compensation structures right, focus your time and effort on those, not on, oh, I'm going to report to the sales director.
Very well said. Also, there's another question. What is the purpose of account executives? Are they a dying breed?
I know there's a great debate in our world at the moment around, the difference or the overlaps between customer success managers, account managers, renewal specialists. I've seen, quite a few different titles. Again, I think I refer to my previous answer. I think what an organization should do is sit down and think about what work needs to be done to deliver success for the company, sorry, for the customer and the company, and how do we best allocate that? Let's forget all these pre-existing, do I have to have an account manager? Not necessarily. Do I think an account manager might be appropriate in certain cases? If I'm in a big enterprise organization sale, maybe. Figure out what it is that you need to do to deliver value to the customer and value to you. And then ask, okay, if that's the work that needs to be done, how can I best allocate that around? But keep one thing in mind all the time, wherever possible, keep the interface with the customer as simple and as easy as possible.
No, I think, yes, I think that last point really, really, really nailed it. I'm, just chiming in on my side is like, maybe if I can take a small stab at small cut at that question. I'm a huge fan of specializations, and what I've seen is, specialists work. But, when you're seeing too many specialists, renewal specialists, retention specialists, onboarding specialists, churn prevention specialist, account management specialist, growth specialist, and there are that basically and I've worked in
if you go down that path, one thing we do is basically saying every customer needs to have a specialist to understand which specialist to contact.
Exactly. So I think it's sort of, there has to be the right balance, and whether account manager sort of makes sense or not, there is no golden answer to it. I think I always say it's never about how you want to operate and deliver success. It's always about how the customer want to interact with you, engage with you. Do they expect an account manager to come in and check on them? If you've sold to a company which pays you, $500,000 every year, I can almost assure you, yes, they do. They expect a face, as approachable right in their lobby to sort of handhold them, help them, whatever, literally own the problem. But if you're talking about, when you're charging a few tens of thousands of dollars, that I think they're absolutely fine. In fact, what we're seeing is more and more customer success is actually delivered remotely, because almost all SaaS organizations have a global customer base, but they have central success teams. That means success is no more being delivered on the field. Success is majority, at least 70, 80% of the time, is being delivered remotely. In fact, that's one of the pieces that we sort of, that was my team 5 years back when I was for the first time putting up the customer success. I was actually putting out the practice. I now, of course, I'm educated that I should worry about the capability. But when I was setting up the customer success practice, one of the fundamental problems was, which sort of drove me to start CustomerSuccessBox, was that we were using a tool which is purely analytics and had no support for delivering success remotely, which is a completely different use case, is what we found. But yeah, good conversation. So I see that there is a very interesting question. So how do you track success and thus know when to contact a customer when you have especially when you have a lot of customers and a very little ARR? So I think we're talking about high volume, low ARPU, low ARR customer base. Which customers to touch base and which ones to not to? How do you do?
I think that's where the right sort of health score is of value. And by the right sort, I mean one which has got customer value and progress towards the success plan as a core element of it. And we understand what drives that, then we can start to say, if as the data grows, then you should be able to say, right, if the customer does these things within these timeframes, this is the likely outcome. That sets your normal path. Once you understand that normal path, then you basically, you track what's out of norm. If you go and look at manufacturing, there's a process in there called statistical quality control, and they have control charts where basically it says, this is the standard, and here's the upper limit and lower limit, which is a number of standard deviations. And you basically look at where they're following against that norm. So that type of thing, I think. At Clicktools, things like CustomerSuccessBox and the other products didn't exist. We built health scoring into Salesforce. And it was, the guy that headed my CS team did that with a bit of help. We pulled data in from different sources and we basically tracked it, as I think we talked about earlier, about percentage change. And it was quite a complex calculation because it was based on, well, here's the norm for this company. Not just a norm, but here's the norm for this company. If that changes, then we need to understand why. Now, that might not mean an invention, but it might.
Yes, I think so. Whenever we are tracking, just to add to, as an explanation for everybody, so Dave and I were speaking offline about some of these pieces. So one of the pieces that we sort of stress on is whenever we are tracking value, it cannot be global value that if somebody is above a certain threshold, hence they're getting value, and below the threshold they're not. That threshold should be different for different accounts. And so for every individual account, so for example, rather than setting up a value proposition, continuing on the CRM example, if opportunities 1 is greater than 10 in the last 30 days, then the account is getting value and is good health. Rather than saying that, I think what we should be saying is, if an account is winning more than 5% of the total opportunities. So if opportunities 1 is more than 5% of total opportunities in the last 30 days, that's when the value is being delivered. And because and that threshold will automatically adjust for every account, and that's how we sort of believe in.
Yeah. And I think part of that, Puneet, I think we should never also forget to ask the customer. I think part of a success plan, a template success plan, and I've got a very simple one. It's discovery, goals and benchmarks, success plan, implementation, ROI. Everybody could apply that. I think let's not be afraid of asking customers where they are, where they want to get to.
Yes.
And asking, if we can't actually track it, then let's say, okay, well, send me a mail every month, about what your score is on this metric.
That last question that you mentioned, asking customers, where do you want to get to? I think that alone is the most golden question that you can ever ask a customer. It's like, okay, you purchased the product. My product can deliver 20 things. Why did you purchase? How can I get you get to that A and solve that one problem very quickly? And I think that's gold.
And if you want to uncover a little bit more about that, the follow-up question, and I learned this from a guy that did some work for us, was, if you take what you're doing now on a scale of 1 to 10, how would you score it? And you can ask this of any process of any organization.
Wow.
And if they say 10, then you think, gosh, there's not much I can do for this company. But if they say anything less than 10, then the next question is, what needs to change to make it a 10? Because that will tell you what their challenges are. That will tell you what they think they need to do. And it gives you at least a handle to start to say, okay, I need to make sure that the success plan is starting to address those things.
Oh, that's great. We've got another interesting one. So on the customer's own scorecard, how can you track how much your company influenced the improved score of that scorecard? So I think, how do you know that you've sort of influenced that scorecard, if that scorecard is going up? That's an interesting one.
It is an interesting one.
I think we're talking about attribution back to customer success teams and practices there.
I think the only way you can is, and this is, my business used to be customer feedback, and that's probably an area where, a single question, how are we contributing to you achieving your goals? A very short survey, and what could we do differently? Might be a value there. There's a piece of me. The hesitation was, well, if they're achieving their goals, does it really matter? And I guess the answer is yes, it does. To answer my own question, yes, it does matter, because we need them to know that we're making that contribution. You might also track things like, their willingness to do reviews and referrals, that type of thing. Their willingness to be case studies. That might give you indications as well. What they're saying about you on social media.
advocacy is can be good proof. Absolutely.
Yep.
So, I've got very interesting one. So, because onboarding is very important, it is customer success program, and helping them is very important. They clearly want to get to the success. The customers clearly want to get to success. They just simply do not want to own the tool. So tell me, should we charge a separate fee for enrolling a customer in a customer success program? And what would you say, to a very complex implementation of a platform using professional services, which is more traditionally called. So, should professional services be merged into customer success? How are they different? Which one should charge? Which one not? Help us, throw some light on that.
Okay, so I think there are certain circumstances where implementations are very complex, not just from a technology perspective, but from an organizational change perspective. There, I think professional services are necessary and should be charged for. There's a danger that gets extended down into charging for customer success for simpler product implementations. And I think there are two dangers in that. One is that you raise an obstacle as part of the buying process. Listen, if this thing's so complex, it seems to me it shouldn't be complex. Why would I have to pay for it? It raises an obstacle as the buying. And the other thing goes back to your and mine interest is in what's my company worth. And this hit home. I think I mentioned that in 2010, I sold 49% of Clicktools to SurveyMonkey. And I was sat down with the guy, Dave Goldberg. He was a chief exec of SurveyMonkey at the time. And we were arguing about valuation because he wanted to pay less and I wanted him to pay more. And we were talking about, well, what the revenues now and what we think they're going to be and what's the multiplier we're going to apply to those revenues. And this stuck with me. And this really is one of the things that drove me towards product-led customer success. Because Dave said, well, look, Dave, Clicktools, you've got this much revenue and this much of it is recurring revenue. I like that. I want that. This much of it is services revenue. I don't want that. I don't want to pay for that. So therefore, I'm going to do two things. I'm going to take that piece off and apply a higher multiple to that, or we include that piece and we pay a lower multiple overall. Now, so that was, we ended up selling the stake. So obviously we came to some sort of agreement, but that stuck with me. So you've got to be very careful because if you charge for it, you're putting into your top line a form of revenue, which has got a much lower gross margin. Mm-hmm. Therefore, if you can in any way productize that, and one of the things that SurveyMonkey are really, really good at doing was making sure that their user interface and their, the whole process flow was so easy to use, you didn't need much help. So, they're at the time, their gross margins were enormous. I mean, their gross margins were as big as the net margins of some companies are now. Sorry, their net margin was as big as some of the gross margins that companies are now. And that stuck with me. So I think we've got to be careful about why we do that. And the other thing is, if we can invest that same amount of money that we're investing people into product, can we find a way to productize some of that? Now, I accept two things. One is there are some implementations that are so complex, you'll never get away from that. Then you go down the services route and you probably go down a fee-paying route. But the other thing is you've got to keep an eye on the margin. I look at the results of quite a few SaaS companies. One is HubSpot. They've just reported, the ones before, I looked at their results. Mm-hmm. And their ARR was high. And I think they made something like, in this particular period, they made 11 million from professional services, $11 million. The gross margin on their subscription revenue was, I think, about 83-84%. Mm-hmm. But the interesting thing is, to earn that 11 million, and this is public data, I'm not telling any secrets here, to earn that 11 million, they spent 13. So you've got to be very careful about, going down the services route. If you can put it into product, you're going to get a higher gross margin, you're going to get a repeatable, scalable process, and you're going to get higher valuation for your company.
Got it. Interesting. So if, as a customer success, as a SaaS organization, if I do want to build this capability of customer success within the organization, are there any prerequisites before we can do that? Where should one start?
You start where I think any successful business starts, and that's by building a very deep understanding of the challenges and goals and work of your target customers. And that doesn't matter, by the way, whether you're going to productize customer success or whether you're going to do it all through people. You have to have that same foundation. And I am staggered by how little some companies know about their chosen customers and what needs and challenges that those customers face. You can't deliver success if you don't know what their job is. That's the prerequisite, the one and only prerequisite that you need.
Very well said. And while because you've seen so many organizations put together customer success, you've yourself were responsible for putting up, bringing and learning the customer success practice at Clicktools and thereon. So what are the common mistakes? What are the common pitfalls that you've seen customer success managers, customer success leaders, and SaaS management and CEOs and founders make repeatedly, and how can they avoid them?
Yeah. So one is the one that I just mentioned, deep understanding. The second is, if you're a SaaS business, think product before anything else. I think the third is recognize that you're not the only thing in customers' lives. You're important, that relationship's important, they've got a job to do, respect their time and respect their challenges and needs. And the other thing is, and this is difficult for people within customer success, but you've got to find ways to influence the broader organization. We've got to, everybody says customer success is a corporate mindset. It's okay to be in a corporate mindset. That only comes to life to me is if I see a marketing team, a sales team, a customer success team, and a product team that agree on the detailed characteristics of their chosen customers and how they're going to address those needs. That they agree that the goal is not maximize the number of leads or maximize the value of sales, that the goal has to be maximizing the lifetime value of customers. And by the way, I'm doing some work with the moment in building a success capability with a private equity company. You start talking to them about product investment versus people investment, about stovepipe measures versus overall measures. They know that stuff. That's what they're looking for. Don't kid ourselves that investors are thick people. They might have a particular perspective, but it's all about making money. And they know the levers that they can pull to make the money most effectively.
And customer success is one of those very effective levers.
Absolutely. In fact, I was at an event yesterday headed by Mikkel Blaisdell, who heads the Customer Success Association. If you've not looked it up, there's a LinkedIn forum group. Go and join that. And he said that you can actually track some of the growth in the interest in customer success and the appointment of customer success managers to about the same time that investors started to say to companies, to VCs that started to say to companies pitching to them, if you haven't got customer success, we don't want to listen to your pitch.
Absolutely. Wow. So no choice, no more excuses. Customer success. Yeah. So, I think we've had a great conversation. Everybody's participated fantastically well. So now, how can we conclude this in the best possible way? What is that one thing that you would like, the listeners to take away that they can put in practice on Monday or maybe tomorrow?
Yeah. I think there is a competitive advantage to be had in understanding your customers better than your competition. and you can all go away on Monday and start to build a deep understanding of who your customers are, what challenges they face, what they're trying to achieve, and how you can help them do that.
Perfect.
And if we do that every day, then we'll just build better and better products and companies.
Excellent. Excellent. Thank you. And, with that, such a simple, but yet such a powerful to do for all of us, including ourselves. I think we can end this conversation, but the formal part of the conversation. But if there are any questions, any comments from everybody who's listening live, I think we have space for a few more questions, and we can. You're welcome to chime in, comment, ask questions, anything. Immediately after this, we do have a 5-minute introduction to CustomerSuccessBox, where I promised David that I'll show him bits and pieces of customer success that is going to very clearly differentiate. He was talking about two sides of the dashboard: company success, customer success, and I think that we're gonna convince him that that CustomerSuccessBox can deliver a good balance between the two, and one reflecting how they're wonderfully aligned. So I'm going to set that up, and while I'm doing that, so Nilesh is watching, so we've got another 60 seconds. If you guys want to go ahead and sort of go ahead and ask any questions. Okay, do we have any more questions? Yes. So we have one more question. So should CSM take the lead on renewals and account managers focus on the new buzz? How do you then introduce CSM without upsetting the account managers, without account managers actually feeling threatened? Well, right. I'm going to just drop in one sentence. If you are making the account managers threatened about their job, I think you are doing something right. So, but I'm going to let David. Go ahead, Dave.
I agree with you, by the way. I don't, one of the roles of a CEO sometimes is to upset people. Listen, I think I go back to an answer I said previously, figure out what work needs to be done. Now, I think if you've got a relatively simple renewal process, if you've got a relatively simple product, and you're probably, have got 1 or 2 or maybe even 3 products, then if you've got the right skill sets, and by the way, that's what you hire for, I'm a great believer in giving people the full responsibility. So at Clicktools, our CSMs had responsibility for renewals and upsells. We made a very, very clear split between new business acquisition and anything post-sale. And anything post-sale from a commercial perspective was owned by the CSM. And I think it's important that CSMs have a number. So I was at this event yesterday, and one of the discussions was about, sometimes what goes wrong with customer success. And there's a lady there, Kate, Kate Forgione. She worked for a large software company, and she had a call to say, you've got to come into a 15-minute meeting, phone call meeting, with your senior manager at this time. She said straight away, I know what was happening. And this company made their whole customer success team redundant in one go. Why did they do that? Because the CFO needed some money to invest in another product. And when he looked at, his cost lines, he couldn't associate any benefit with the CS team. They had no revenue responsibility. I think if you've not got a revenue responsibility, you're in danger. So, you know, I would, if I was a CSM, I'd want to take a number. I'd want to make sure I was trained and given the right tools to do that, but I'd want that number. Because I think otherwise, and you know, it's simple, you know, again, horses for courses. Think about what needs to be done from a customer's perspective and what's the best way to do that. But if it's about upsetting an account manager, if it's, you know, if I've got a choice between upsetting an account manager or losing a customer, I know I've got an upset account manager.
Okay, that's very clearly said. So we have one more you know, question on, can you throw more light on how should we train you know, people to be successful customer success managers? And I think let's talk about, you know, training or educating the entire organization to develop that capability. Because what I sensed from our conversation, it is a lot more wider than just success managers domain.
Yeah, I think so. Let's take the first piece first. In terms of training customer success managers, it starts with who you hire, and I think increasingly, not the only, but one of the most important skill sets you have to hire for, excuse me, is domain knowledge. So if you're offering a marketing-based product, you need people who know that domain of marketing. If you're offering it to sales, et cetera, et cetera. So domain knowledge and hiring for that, I think, is important. Because don't forget, you're going to be putting these people in front of people that know that field. They have to be at least as good, if not better. Second thing, I think you have to build a very robust CSM onboarding program. And that is based around a series of competencies. So, you know, their ability to build a relationship, their ability to manage data, whatever it is that may be, you know, in your kit. If anybody wants, I've got some competency descriptions. I'll happily share those. But be careful of training. And the reason I say this is, again, it's something we were talking about earlier. The Chinese can only express the concept of learning using two words, study and practice. So when I was working for one SaaS company, one of the things we put in place is what we call the golden triangle. And the golden triangle is the relationship between their performance and what their measures are saying, the training they've taken, and the coaching that they're provided. So I dislike annual reviews. They're worthless. They're just a waste of time and effort. I do believe that constantly, so basically to me of a one-to-one is, let's have a look at your numbers. Let's have a look at what you're trying to achieve in your longer term careers. Okay, this training will help you do that. But if we're going to give you this training, I'm also imposing a condition on your team leader that they monitor you specifically around that skill set and they coach you into how to put that training into action. So then I get, you know, performance leads to training, training drives coaching, coaching should lead to improved performance. And that's the mechanism we want much more than training.
And I think some of the participants and listeners already wanna get more learning from you. So Nilesh has gone ahead and shared your LinkedIn. I hope that's one of the best ways to sort of reach you. And so you can do that. So we don't have any more questions. So I'm going to go ahead and switch to giving you a glimpse of, and we are already over time, so I'm not going to take more than 5 minutes, but I'm going to show you a quick glimpse into CustomerSuccessBox and actually walk you through some of the pieces that we've never shared before. So I think you're gonna find this interesting, and please keep the feedback coming. Cool. I'm going to go ahead and share my desktop. Fantastic. So you should be able to see my desktop. Now, this is the current version of CustomerSuccessBox. And once you dive into a single account, the platform is pretty huge, so we will not be able to walk you through every piece here, but we're diving into some very specific things. As you can see, we're calculating health. Now, when I dive into a single, so this is the platform, and now when I'm diving into a single account, what I see, for example, buying show is an example. I see the account health, which is average right here, and I'm able to see the entire history of. I'm just going to use capability to draw. So this is where you can see the history of account health for the last 60 days, and this is the health. But this is the current version, or rather, to be retired version. And what is coming is what I think aligns beautifully with what Dave spoke about today, is the ability to define customer success and company success. In the current form and shape, the way, the way the health is calculated is, the way health is calculated is you go to the health configuration screen, which is fairly advanced, and you can define parameters at an account level and set thresholds as a percentage of an account parameter. But you are bringing in product adoption, product usage, frequency, support, like how many support tickets they have, any custom attributes, any product adoption, all of that in the, in a single health window. And I'm going to come back to this, but in the new version, the next 2.0, what we are doing is this. So you're looking at CustomerSuccessBox Health 2.0 for the first time. So this is where we're pretty much announcing, and Dave would love to, and Dave is looking at it for the first time along with everybody else. So Dave, feel free to talk about it. So now think of health as, if you ask me my health, Puneet, what's your health? And I'm confused. Do you want my professional health? Do you want my physical health? Do you want my mental health? Do you want my relationship health? There is no single health score which sort of can average all of them, and averages will not make sense. In this case, what we've done is we thought through this, and we believe that there are 4 core pillars of an account health. Number 1, product adoption, which we believe should be a direct reflection of value delivered. Financial health. This speaks purely of company health. Now here we are moving away from customer success to company success. Service health should be clearly an indicator of customer success again. How well are we able to deliver services? Relationship can be both customer, can be account, depending on how you look at engagement. And then the 5th core pillar, we believe, is something that should always reflect, there are pieces that no matter what you do, you will never be able to capture as part of a structured data. So now, you can go from different account to different account, and you'll be able to see all these health calculated differently. But the way we are calculating this unique is what makes it very unique. So when you're looking at what is a good health customer, you're just not defining the product value delivered via product adoption, but you're also defining relationship, service, and financial. So when you're defining each one of them, so there are certain criteria around product adoption you want to capture in, okay, what's the value delivered? Remember, we were talking about, opportunities generated, or let's say this is an example of a marketing tool. So for example, content created could be value delivered. So let's say if there is content created, which is at least 20% of active users are generating content every 60 days. Now this could be beautiful traction of value delivered. Oops, I shouldn't have closed that. But when you look at financials, it could be, hey, they shouldn't have any invoice which is overdue, for example. And that can be tracked here. We should not have, or there should not be any invoice which is overdue above a certain amount, things like those. And then we're looking at service health, which can take into consideration things like what are total critical tickets which are open, and things like those. And then in the relationship health, you talk about things which are how long back was the last touch point. So last touch points has been more than 60 days ago. Can take into account the details of the relationship or the engagement, and all of them put together will give you a clear picture of an account, not a single health, but of every aspect. And Dave, tell me if you'll agree that we've got product adoption, which is clear indicator of customer success, service health, clear indicator of customer success, excuse me. And then we have financial, which is company success. Relationship, I think, is sort of half and half, talks about company success as well as customer success. And you mentioned we don't want to overwhelm them, but this will tell whether we want to reach out or not. And then we can base the relationship on that. And then risk sort of captures anything which otherwise we cannot capture. So that's our health 2.0. And a risk can be like, okay, we've got medium risk because let's say the champion just left the company, and we can add that right here and capture that risk, which will otherwise be completely lost in a structured data. Any comments, Dave? Otherwise, any comments from anyone else? Feel free to share.
I like what I see, Puneet. I'm looking forward to version 3.0, which has got a box in there that says customer value.
Okay.
We have one question. How easily can you integrate data in CustomerSuccessBox from different platforms, like tickets from Zendesk, data from SFDC, or platform usage from our own SaaS platform?
Thanks. Thanks, Nilesh. So I think integration is something which sort of where we start. Unless we are bringing in good data, there is no way we can deliver good health. And it's just not about health. You want to look at health in the context, in a full context. So you want that 360-degree view of the customer. You want to know how old the customer is. You want to know how many support tickets, service tickets they have, and when is the renewal coming up, if they have an invoice which is overdue and things like those, or when is the next billing date. So we bring in data from all of these platforms: Salesforce, Zendesk, which was the other one, Nilesh, which was mentioned. The billing platforms, yes. Zora, ChargeBee, Recurly, Chargeify, all the subscription management platforms, and as well as invoicing platforms. So we have a long list of integrations, which maybe, if Nilesh, if you don't mind, if you can throw it in the chat, but all those integrations we connect with. But yeah, without integrations, it will sort of be a very half-cooked solution otherwise. Cool. With that said, thank you so much, everybody, for your patience, for your participation in the webinar today. Keep sharing your feedback, and we will keep hosting more and more guests and experts like Dave, and we sort of would love to have more and more participation. Thank you so much. With this, we'll call it an evening over here. Thank you so much, Dave, for your time and for sharing all this knowledge. I think we will keep coming back to you for more.
Yeah, my pleasure, and thanks for the platform, and thanks to everyone for joining us.
Take care.
Goodbye.